Today, the Matt Walsh Show, the blame game has officially started in the Democrat Party. Who is at fault for their massive, historic, humiliating loss on Tuesday? Unsurprisingly, they all seem to have arrived at the same conclusion. It's not their fault, it's yours. Also, late-night TV hosts have crying fits over Trump's win. It's the first time they've been funny in years. And feminists are so devastated over the election result that they're swearing off sex, marriage, and childbirth. They're going to get revenge on us by dying alone. We'll talk about all that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. America has elected Donald Trump as the 47th president, and we are marking the moment with a 47 of our own. Use code TRUMP to get 47% off a new annual DailyWire Plus membership. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe and join us with this exclusive offer. The question I get a lot from my audience, especially after they've seen one of my movies, is how can I get in the conservative fight? For starters, you need to be strategic about where your money is going. Most credit cards are funneling millions to left-wing causes and candidates, hoping that you don't notice, but now you can align your spending with your values. Coin is America's first conservative credit card. That's COIGN.com. A portion of every transaction is donated to conservative causes and charities at no cost to you. Coin empowers us to get woke out of our wallet, and it's a good-looking credit card, too. Bright red with We the People on the front. Coin works everywhere Visa's accepted, and it comes with 100% U.S.-based customer service and consumer protections. Thousands of patriots are earning cash back while fighting the liberal agenda. The demand for this card is so high that there's now a wait list. This is a movement. You can be a part of it. Go to COIGN.com to join the wait list. Be sure to select Daily Wire in the How Did You Hear About It section. Terms apply. Go to coin.com/disclosures for full details. The Rio Grande Valley, which sits on the border with Mexico, has been a reliable stronghold for Democrats for a very long time. And that's why back during the 2020 election, you might remember some articles about a strange turn of events in tiny Zapata County, Texas. That was the only county in the Rio Grande Valley that supported Donald Trump in 2020. And the rest went for Joe Biden, mostly by comfortable margins, although the margins were slimmer than they were back in 2016. Nobody really talked about these results because they aligned perfectly with the Democrats' worldview. It goes something like this. The Rio Grande Valley is heavily Hispanic. And Hispanics obviously hate Trump because he's a racist who wants to build a wall and deport them. And if that wasn't bad enough, Trump once posted a tweet that read, "Happy Cinco de Mayo, the best taco bowls are made in Trump Tower Grill. I love Hispanics." And as you may remember, that caused a whole outrage cycle. CNN went back and forth about whether it was inappropriate to suggest that taco bowls were Mexican food. And they concluded that it was indeed horribly racist. Whatever Trump does, the media tells us, he just keeps proving again and again how much he hates Hispanics. So you can imagine Democrats' surprise when on Tuesday, Trump defeated Kamala Harris in every single one of the 8 counties on the 400-mile stretch from the Gulf of Mexico to the Big Bend region. He didn't just take Zapata this time. He also took the counties of Cameron, Hidalgo, Starr, Webb, Maverick, Kinney, Willacy, and Valverde. The shift in Starr County was especially striking. This is a county that's more than 95% Hispanic. In 2016, Trump lost Starr County by 60 points. In 2020, Trump lost it by less than 5 points. But on Tuesday, Trump won Starr County by 16 points. So in other words, in the span of 2 elections, Donald Trump swung the vote by more than 76% in the most Hispanic county in the United States. He became the first Republican to win the county since 1892, well more than a century ago. It's one of the most incredible swings we've ever seen in American politics. Now, how did that happen? If you spend some time looking up local news reports from Starr County, you'll find that, well, they're tired of illegal aliens streaming across the border and into their community. They don't appreciate the Biden-Harris administration's refusal to enforce immigration law because it affects them directly every single day since they're located right on the border. But, you know, that's not the whole story. There's a pretty big problem for Democrats. We're seeing similar upsets in heavily Hispanic counties that are located thousands of miles away from the southern border. For example, as of yesterday afternoon, Donald Trump was winning in Passaic County, New Jersey, which is heavily Latino, And journalist Michael Tracy pointed out Hillary Clinton won that county by 32 points. Biden won it by 17. Donald Trump was ahead by 3 points as of yesterday. So that's a swing of 35 points from 2016. And these are not cherry-picked results that we're talking about. At the national level, Trump posted very similar numbers everywhere. He just got more votes from Latino men than any other Republican candidate in recent memory. Here's CNN's breakdown. They couldn't find anything similar happening since the 1970s.
Donald Trump won among Latino men by 10 points. I was on my computer while you were talking with our dear friend Philip over there, and I looked back at every exit poll that I could find since 1972. I believe that this is the first time ever that a Republican candidate for president won among Latino men, and that supercharged Donald Trump among Latinos overall, and it's why he put forward the best performance among Latino voters since the advent of exit polls in the early 1970s.
So this is a result that the analysts clearly were not expecting, even though Hispanic voters have been trending towards Republican candidates since 2016. And on the surface, for Democrats, it has to be extremely confusing. After all, Trump is running on an explicit platform of deporting illegal aliens. A significant majority of illegal aliens in the United States are obviously Hispanic, and therefore, in the Democrat worldview, a significant majority of Hispanics should oppose Trump. What this overlooks, of course, is that the majority of Hispanics in this country are not here illegally. Many of them care about the rule of law and the economy and lowering the crime rate. Many of them are upset by the prospect of socialism coming to America because they've already seen it in places like Cuba. And so for all those logical reasons, you can see why Hispanic voters might be turning away from Democrats. That's not even getting into the extraordinary weaknesses that are unique to Kamala Harris. But on Morning Joe, none of these weaknesses or potential explanations came up. Instead, Joe Scarborough and Al Sharpton used the exact same explanation they use whenever any other demographic group does something they don't like. They determined that Kamala is losing support among Hispanics because other than black people, Hispanics are some of the most sexist and racist people on the planet. Watch.
Democrats need to be mature, and they need to be honest. And they need to say, yes, there's misogyny. But it's not just misogyny from white men. Mm-hmm. It's misogyny from Hispanic men.
Right.
It's misogyny from black men, things we've all been talking about, who do not want a woman leading them. Might be race issues with Hispanics. They don't want a black woman as president of the United States. You know, the Democratic Party, I've always found when you're sitting around talking, they love to just sort of balkanize everybody into these separate groups and say, oh, white people don't like women and black people. No, it is time for the Democrats to say, okay, and you and I have talked about this before, a lot of Hispanic voters have problems with black candidates.
Right.
A lot
and
of,
with other Hispanics. You got some that don't like each other. And some of the most misogynist things I've heard going on this Get Out the Vote tour came from black men. I mean, misogynist things. So you're absolutely right. It's not simplistic. And we've got to have real honest conversations about it.
Well, at least they're finally admitting that racism and sexism are not unique to white people. So, that's progress, I guess, maybe. Scarborough starts by saying that Democrats need to be mature and honest, and then he proceeds to be, of course, neither of those things. Maturity means that you're capable of introspection. It means you're capable of assessing your own faults and not just criticizing the perceived faults of other people. That's the foundation of maturity. You cannot be mature if you do not have the capacity for self-analysis. That's literally what maturity is. And in this case, it would mean addressing whether Hispanic voters didn't like Kamala because she was an extremely bad candidate who was propped up by corporate media outlets that lied relentlessly about everything her opponent did. Could that explain why Hispanic voters don't like her? What about the fact that Democrats have made life much worse for everybody in the country? People don't like it when their lives are worse. They want their lives to be better. Imagine that. Could that be why Hispanics started turning against Democrats 4 years ago? Well, Scarborough and Al Sharpton, they have no answers to these questions. And there's another problem, too. If Democrats are going to cite racism as the explanation whenever a demographic group turns on them, then they'll have to basically accuse the entire country of racism at this point. According to NBC exit polls, 64% of Native American voters voted for Trump on Tuesday. 64%. As you can see, that's the highest of any demographic group in the poll. It's higher than white people and Hispanics. What could possibly explain this? Democrats are the ones doing land acknowledgements all the time. They're the ones crying about colonialism. Why isn't that paying off? Must be racism. In fact, Trump caused a lot of controversy back in 2020 when he defended the Redskins team name right before it was changed. Trump is also the guy who has not said the name Elizabeth Warren in like 5 years because he always just calls her Pocahontas. So, and these are all things that on Democrat logic should result in a like 99-1 blowout loss among Native Americans. Instead, he won them by more than 60%. So Native Americans are racist against themselves, apparently. Presumably, racism is also the reason that in Wisconsin, one exit poll showed that Trump was winning voters aged 18 to 24 by double digits. Young people, also racist. So is everybody living in Dearborn, Michigan, where Trump just won by 7% after Biden took Dearborn with 88% of the vote just 4 years ago. That's a 95% swing. What could explain that? Could it be, as the Detroit Free Press reported, that, quote, in Dearborn, there was frustration with Democrats before the war in Gaza as protesters demonstrated against some LGBTQ plus books in public schools they saw too explicit, resulting in Democrats losing support in heavily Muslim precincts in Dearborn in November 2022. And it sounds like a problem if you're trying to win over a heavily Muslim precinct. Maybe Muslims don't want gay porn books in schools. Maybe they don't think children should be sterilized and castrated. Or maybe they're just racist against black women. You know, that makes the most sense. And if so, they're in very good company, apparently. The clip I'm about to play features a man named Anthony Coley. He's a former top official at the DOJ who served as a senior advisor to the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. And just to restate, this guy was advising the chief law enforcement official in the entire country. He was paid by the taxpayers to provide guidance on some of the most important issues facing the justice system. So with that in mind, behold Anthony Coley's assessment of how Kamala lost on Tuesday.
We are at a moment where we're going to be digesting this for a while. The headwinds she faced are real, right? When I think about the right track, wrong track numbers, she couldn't overcome that. When I think about the economic anxiety that people around the country feel, she couldn't overcome that. But I also have a question about the role that race and gender played in these results. Here are the facts, and we would pull back the layers. She is a person of color. She is a she. And she is in an interracial marriage. And I wonder, I have this question mark in my mind over whether all of those things combined was too much for pockets of this country. And it is a stunning, this says more about who we are as a country and this moment, that this overqualified African-American mixed race woman did not win this race, and she lost it to a man who is a felon.
Yeah. Well, America, it's our fault. America's just a terrible country. It is. So you should just leave. You know, this guy, Scarborough, Al Sharpton, all these people, just leave. I mean, we're a terrible country. We're an awful place. Who would want to be here? Who would want to live in this country? It's infested with racists and sexists, and it's just an awful. So just leave. Go somewhere else. For your own good. I think it would be for your own good. It would really be for the best for all of us. You know, if you ever come across someone who knows nothing about the United States and that person wants to know how it's possible that the DOJ in a supposedly first world country charged the leading presidential candidate with a bunch of fake crimes just before the election, show them this clip. This is the caliber of person who was advising the Attorney General. This is the level of intellect and depth of analysis you get at the DOJ right now, but hopefully not for much longer. This guy can barely contain his rage as he accuses the entire country of being racist because they didn't like Kamala. She's overqualified, he says. But wait a minute, you might ask. How can a woman who can't answer even basic questions about her own policies possibly be overqualified? How can a candidate who did not ever lay out any kind of coherent policy be overqualified? Like, what does overqualified mean in that context? And then he makes it clear that, in his view, being qualified basically means you're not a convicted felon. And once you are convicted, then you are unqualified, apparently. Unless the felony you've been convicted of is, say, murder or robbery. In which case, I'm sure this guy would be the first one to say that your criminal history should not be held against you at all. In fact, you probably shouldn't even go to prison. This is why the DOJ bombarded Trump with all those fraudulent charges on everything from insurrection, quote unquote, to storing classified documents. They really believed at the highest levels of the DOJ that voters would disqualify Trump once he had some convictions on his record. That's the only reason they went through with this. They thought they had the power to influence the election, but they didn't have that power. So all they can do now is lash out at the entire country for being racist. We're such a racist country, apparently, that we promote morons like this to high-level positions in the DOJ. And then put them on TV to say extremely dumb things for money. That's how terrible we are. And of course, I can't talk about dumb people saying inane things on television without bringing up The View, which had a full-on meltdown yesterday, as you would expect. Watch as Sunny Hostin explains that Kamala's defeat had nothing to do with policy whatsoever. Instead, Kamala lost because, well, you know, watch.
I'm surprised at the result, but I'm not surprised. As a woman of color, I was so hopeful that a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. Mm-hmm. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum of cultural resentment in this country.
So it manages to contradict herself right as she starts speaking. I'm surprised, but not surprised. That doesn't mean you can either be surprised or unsurprised. You can't really be both at the same time. Then she goes on to explain that cultural resentment is the reason Kamala lost the election. Somehow none of this cultural resentment prevented Barack Obama from winning 2 terms in office. But it's shown up now to crush Kamala's presidential ambitions. And what's funny about this, other than the fact that it makes no sense, is that Sunny Hostin is the last person on the planet who should be lecturing anyone else about the evils of cultural resentment. A couple of years ago, she compared white women to roaches and said they want to live in The Handmaid's Tale, which is by law the one book that liberals are ever capable of referencing. The other one was Harry Potter until J.K. Rowling was excommunicated from the leftist church for saying that men can't get pregnant. Anyway, watch.
I read a poll just yesterday that white Republican suburban women are now going to vote Republican.
Why?
It's almost like roaches voting for Raid, right? It's like they're voting.
No, it's insulting to the voter.
They're voting against their own self-interest. Do they want to live in Gilead?
Okay,
do they want to live in the hands?
Do we love democracy? Or
sounds a lot like cultural resentment to me. But maybe roaches is a term of endearment. She meant like the good kind of roaches, you know, the cute ones. I guess. Who's to say? What we can say is that even on the supposedly more intelligent cable news shows, the analysis isn't much better. Here's former Obama campaign guru David Axelrod offering his nuanced assessment of the race.
Let's be honest about this, okay? Let's be absolutely blunt about it. There were appeals to racism in this campaign, and there is racial bias in this country, and there is sexism in this country. And anybody who thinks that did not in any way impact on the outcome of this race is wrong. I'm not saying that was the main reason that Kamala Harris lost and Donald Trump won it.
There is racial bias in this country, and there is sexism, says David Axelrod. But he says it's not the main reason Kamala lost. So he's just throwing it out there, I guess. Did you know that some Americans are racist? Did you know that America has not completely and totally eradicated all traces of racism? Something that is quite literally impossible for any country to ever do? Well, now you know. Of course, what Axelrod won't do at any point is talk about the racial bias in this country against white men like Donald Trump, which CNN and other major corporations perpetuate at every opportunity. To give just one example, yesterday, Nicole Hannah-Jones, the fraudster behind the fake history of the 1619 Project, declared that white Americans, including Latinos apparently, are bent on enforcing a white ethno-state. And that's supposedly why Kamala lost. Quote, since this nation's inception, large swaths of white Americans, including white women, have claimed a belief in democracy while actually enforcing a white ethnocracy. Anti-blackness continues to be a powerful force in this country, and anti-blackness cannot just be attributed to white Americans. The shock about the significant increase in Latinos choosing Trump with his anti-immigrant rhetoric, family separation policy, and insults of Latin countries over a black woman tells me too many people fail to understand that anti-blackness is deeply embedded in Latino cultures as well. Also, it's embedded in black culture too, apparently, because Donald Trump had major swings among black men. So now I wanted to read all of that just because it's amazing to hear anyone still talking about the family separation policy like this. We're supposed to still be amazed that when adults commit federal crimes, they're sometimes separated from their families. You know, that happens literally every day in this country to American citizens. I mean, they've been trying to throw Donald Trump in prison. They're going to separate him from his family. And it's especially incredible given that, as the DailyWire reported earlier this year, the Biden-Harris administration has made the situation far worse. They did away with DNA testing that the Trump administration implemented to make sure that adults who took custody of minors at the border were actually related to them. And as a result, tens of thousands of children are unaccounted for, and many are suspected to have been taken by human traffickers. Well, let's just ignore all of that and say that Latinos hate black people, says Nicole Hannah-Jones. So how's this for a new rule? As long as the corporate press is pretending that race hustlers like Jones are really profound intellectuals worth respecting, they don't get to lecture anyone else about racial bias. That's one change we could make. But that'll never happen, of course, because the next generation of Barack Obama impersonators won't know how to attract attention to themselves anymore. So consider this video from Tennessee State Representative Justin Jones, where he informs us that Kamala lost because we're a white supremacist country that can't tolerate multiracial democracy. Watch.
Hey, y'all. Like many of you, I woke up this morning numb, unsettled, and honestly feeling despair about our nation. But I think, let this despair not lead us to hopelessness, but let it lead us to a point of repair. I think this is a recognition that this nation is broken, that it's sick. That anytime we've moved toward multiracial democracy, we've seen a backlash of white supremacy that is as bone deep as this nation's history.
So yet again, this alleged backlash to multiracial democracy didn't prevent Barack Obama from winning 2 consecutive terms. So why would it prevent Kamala from becoming the president? Could it be that everybody understood, as Joe Biden admitted, that she was selected for the job solely because of her skin color and gender? Could it be that in everything she did, she reaffirmed that she's unqualified for the job and incompetent and incapable of doing the job? California Congresswoman Maxine Waters doesn't think so. She also came out and accused half the country of being racist. Although there's a twist this time. In this instance, the host pushed back a little bit. Watch what happened next.
People don't like to talk about racism, but the fact of the matter is the majority of his votes are going to come from whites. And that's who has been talking to all campaign about taking the country back. Taking it back from whom? Taking it back from too many minorities who are doing too well, who are succeeding, who are closing the wealth gap. And something has to be done in his estimation. And so that's what it's really all about. It's not about the economy and all that, people would like to basically hide behind. It's about white versus others.
But, it's looking possible tonight that Donald Trump has won the popular vote. Are you saying that the majority of Americans are racist?
I'm saying the majority of the Americans will buy into anything as long as they believe that somehow they will have more advantage. They will have more ownership.
Wow. Okay. So she, it's just not trying to hide the fact that she just despises the people that she's ostensibly supposed to be representing. So she begins by, which by the way, if talk about being unqualified. If this is how you feel about the American people, then you should be obviously you're unqualified for the. You should be like legally barred from representing the country or holding political office. If you're going to go out and say that America's a racist country, most Americans are racist, you're not. We cannot trust you to represent us. It's in government. If that's how if you despise the people that you're representing. So she begins by saying that whites want to take the country back from minorities who are succeeding. She clarifies it's not about the economy, it's about white versus others. It's about as explicit as you can be in terms of accusing people of racism. Then when the host offers some minor pushback, she clarifies that actually half the country just wants to improve its position, although she frames that, of course, in a negative way. Now, fortunately, there's a self-described Democrat strategist named Ali Samarco to rescue us from all this confusion. This was her assessment on X. Quote, if Kamala Harris had done everything the same, but she was a white man, she would have won. It's that simple. Well, that clears it up. If instead of Kamala Harris, we had, say, Pete Buttigieg, then Democrats would have swept the blue wall. It would have dominated in the Rio Grande Valley. Texas would go blue. Or more likely, Democrats would have lost just as badly, and we'd all be hearing about how much we all hate homosexuals. That's what would have happened there. Over in the Atlantic, to their credit, they're hinting at another possible explanation for Democrats' blowout loss. All over the country, it looks like people who have direct and long-standing exposure to Democrat Party rule are now turning against the party. Philadelphia County went 5 points to the right, while Detroit moved 9 points to the right. Cook County in Illinois moved more than 10 points to the right. Manhattan moved nearly 10 points towards the Republican. Brooklyn went 12 points to the right. Queens and Bronx County shifted more than 20 points to the right each. Miami-Dade in Florida went nearly 20 points to the right. Harris County and Bexar County in Texas went 8 points to the right. Dallas County went 10 points to the right, and on it goes. These are such consistent and staggering declines that very clearly Democrats aren't governing well. And Americans are tired of being ruled by these people. But wherever you look, from cable news to social media to Democrat politicians at all levels of government, they all agree that fundamentally the blame for this election falls on the American people for being racist and sexist. The Democrat Party is so firmly grounded in identity politics that they're incapable of seeing this loss any other way. It's clear that they're going to ride the identity politics train over the cliff and into the ground. Now, for Republicans, from a purely political perspective, that's probably great news. It means we can look forward to many more Kamala Harris-style implosions in the future. For people living in the many cities and towns that Democrats are ruining, though, it means the suffering is probably going to continue for quite a while until these people are removed from power for good. They either need to go, or there needs to be a moment of massive transformation in the Democrat Party. On Tuesday, whether Democrats want to acknowledge it or not, tens of millions of Americans sent a clear signal that a moment like that can't come soon enough. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Let me tell you about a looming threat to our constitutional republic that the mainstream media won't cover. The radical left is plotting a Supreme Court coup. And they're not even trying to hide it anymore, folks. These progressive ideologues want to eliminate the court's conservative majority by packing it with their own hand-picked justices. It's not court reform, it's a blatant power grab to get the outcomes they want. We've already seen their playbook: made-up ethical attacks on justices, illegal protests at their home, open threats from so-called representatives. It's Venezuela-style court packing, and it would spell the end of judicial independence and the rule of law as we know it. But hey, who needs checks and balances when you can have a rubber stamp on your radical agenda, right? But here's the point, and here's the hope, really. First Liberty is leading the charge to protect the Supreme Court from this radical plan. They're fighting to preserve the legitimacy of the court and the separation of powers that safeguards our freedoms. Here's what you need to do. Go to supremecoup.com/Walsh. That's supremecoup.com/Walsh to learn how you can help stop the left's takeover of the Supreme Court. The future of our country is quite literally in your hands. Check out supremecoup.com/Walsh today. So just to underscore the point, we already covered this in the opening, obviously, but here's this headline quickly from Axios. President-elect Donald Trump was backed by 46% of Latino voters on Tuesday, surpassing Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush to win the biggest share of the national Latino vote by a Republican presidential contender in modern times. So that's their the exit poll that they were looking at. So, you know, it's what we already talked about, but it really can't be talked about enough because this is a massive, earth-shattering shift, and we discussed some of the reasons that it's happening. But here's another thing, another factor that I want to just touch on for a moment. If we're looking for people to thank for this shift in the Hispanic vote, we can certainly thank all of the leftists who unironically use the term Latinx, Latinx, over the last several years. We can thank all of them because this could not have happened without you guys. This is Latinx was a very important moment in all of this. Now, I'm not saying that Latinx is the reason that Hispanics shifted to Trump in such large numbers, but it definitely played a part. it is at least symptomatic of the larger reason, which is that Democrats only had, again, identity politics to offer. It's the only thing they had, and it was the most debasing, insulting, patronizing form of identity politics. To the point that they even tried to, they took this group of people and renamed them and said, this is what your name is now. This is what we're going to call you and what you need to call yourselves. Because it'll make trans people feel better if you do. I'm not even joking when I say that we are rapidly approaching a point when the left will actually strongly support building a wall and deporting illegal immigrants. Now that they can see that these people are not useful to them. Or are getting to the point. I mean, they are rapidly becoming. It's like once Hispanic voters are firmly a majority Republican voters, then support for immigration and illegal immigration, that will no longer be a part of the Democrat playbook. So, which is another major positive here. You know, it's another reason why this is such a good, such a positive development. Because we will reach a point where eventually everybody agrees that we should build a wall and enforce our borders. It's just that Democrats will agree for purely political reasons and no other reason. Well, we've heard the reaction from cable news pundits and news anchors and The View. We haven't heard from the most esteemed political analysts in the country yet, and that would be the late night TV hosts. So we'll start with Stephen Colbert giving his take on the election results.
I'm your host, Stephen Colbert. Well, it happened again. After a bizarre and vicious campaign fueled by a desperate need not to go to jail, Donald Trump has won the 2024 election. It's almost like you rehearsed that. The deep shock and sense of loss is enormous. Okay, but let's look at the bright side. This way, at least there'll be a peaceful transfer of power. Mike Pence, Ali Oxenfree. All day yesterday, I was walking around proudly wearing my I voted sticker. Today, I wore my I am questioning my fundamental belief in the goodness of humanity sticker. Yeah, they give those out. They give those out at the bake sale. Right outside. Now, as a late night host, people often say to me, come on, part of you's got to want Trump to win because he gives you so much material to work with. No. No one tells the guy who cleans the bathroom, wow, you must love it when someone has explosive diarrhea. There's so much material for you to work with. Come on. Now, you understand that? That good? I wish, you wish, so many of us wish this hadn't happened, but that is not for us to decide. This is a democracy. That's democracy with a capital duh. And in this democracy, the majority has spoken, and they said they don't care that much about democracy. And I want to take a moment to congratulate Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on running an amazing 107-day campaign.
Yes, what an amazing campaign. First of all, what a hilarious comedic monologue. What a great stand-up set from that guy. Just hilarious, great jokes. Amazing campaign. Absolutely amazing campaign. An amazing campaign that resulted in a devastating blowout loss. An amazing campaign where Kamala lost ground and lost votes in literally every county in the country. But that's an amazing campaign. It's like if somebody builds a bridge and the bridge is, let's say an engineer designs a bridge and then the bridge is built and they had the ribbon cutting ceremony and 90 cars are lined up to cross the bridge, and 3.5 minutes later, the bridge collapses and sends the 90 cars tumbling into the river. And then Stephen Colbert shows up and says, wow, the engineer did an amazing job. Amazing job. Really amazing. Look at this the amazing collapsible bridge. And I guess it is amazing in a certain way. I don't know. I've never seen a bridge collapse, but I guess like it is an amazing sight in a certain way. And Kamala's campaign, in a certain way, is amazing. I mean, it achieved an amazing defeat. It's a camp. There are zero bright spots in this case. You can't even look at this campaign, look at the election results if you're Kamala. There's not one single, even smaller thing you can look to and say, well, at least we had that, or at least we made some progress there, or, hey, we didn't win, but we did this and that and that. You can't even do that. Just losses across the board everywhere with everything. Amazing campaign, though. So that was Colbert, and if you thought that was insufferable, just wait until you hear from Jimmy Kimmel.
Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet. And most of all...
So Jimmy gets emotional there, starts crying a little bit. Which just, it's so disgraceful. If you were capable of shame at all, to be crying on camera because you're sad that your candidate didn't win the election, you are a grown-ass man crying over that. I know we've grown accustomed to these late night alleged comedians being total partisan hacks. We've grown accustomed to it, but it really is just egregious. And it wasn't like this until recently, until Trump. Before that, the late night shows at least made an effort to appeal to everybody. Jay Leno was a mainstream comedian, and he did a show that was designed to appeal to a wide cross-section of the country. But now these late night shows have decided that they don't want half the country, more than half, as we've seen, more than half. They don't want more than half the country. They don't want more than half of the country to watch. Kamala was just blown out, landslide loss. She lost the popular vote. The country overwhelmingly chose Trump, and the late night shows are directly insulting and alienating the overwhelming majority, saying, we don't want you. So they've decided that they want to be irrelevant. And they are. And it's a kind of a remarkable decision. And one other thing, too, and this is also something that is also new, though we're used to it by now, we kind of take it for granted, but having comedians, quote unquote, who give emotional monologues where there are no jokes being told, it was never like that before. You would never, ever see that until recently. It would never happen, and it shouldn't happen. Your job is to be funny, Jimmy. That's your job. I know you've never been funny, but it's your job to be. Your job is to tell jokes. That's the only reason your job exists. It's the only thing anyone wants to hear from you. This is like, it's like, imagine you go to the symphony to watch a performance, but instead the musicians come out and decide to, do a magic show or something. You might even like magic shows, but that's not, you didn't go to the symphony for that. That's not why you're there. You're not there for that. You didn't just go to watch these people do whatever they feel like doing in the moment. You went for the music. So if you're in the symphony, play the damn music. And if you're a comedian, allegedly, be funny. Your job is to be funny. Oh, but I'm sad. I'm sad, and I'm angry about the election results. Yeah, well, that's the job. Being funny, even when you're sad or angry and don't feel like being funny. That's the whole job. That's the challenging thing you're supposed to be really good at, which is why you're paid millions of dollars. But they've given up on it, and they're fine with being irrelevant. And as I said, they are. Speaking of people who become irrelevant, I thought this was interesting. Hollywood Reporter has this report today. It says TV viewing on election night dropped off considerably from 4 years ago. Primetime coverage of the presidential election averaged 49.29 million viewers across 18 cable and broadcast networks from 7 to 11 p.m. That's a steep 26% decline from 4 years ago, which drew 56.92 million viewers, and the least watched election night since the rating service began keeping total viewer tallies in 2000. And I've seen it. So the TV news saw massive drops on election night. 20, whatever this did, I just read 26%, 22.6%. 26% decline. So it's a major decline. And I've seen this, and this article just says it doesn't give any explanation for why that might be the case. I've seen some people on the left maybe trying to make this some kind of slight moral victory that, people didn't care about this election. People aren't really that excited about Donald Trump. Well, no, that's obviously not the case. People were very interested. Everybody was interested. It's just that they weren't going to cable news or broadcast news to watch the coverage. Instead, they were streaming the coverage on the internet. I mean, our election coverage at the Daily Wire had, I know we finished with 2 or 3 million views just on YouTube, 1 million concurrent live viewers on Twitter. We were also streaming on other platforms. I don't know what the final numbers were, but millions and millions of people were watching us. Of course, every other conservative media outlet had streams going. So people were watching us. They were watching The Blaze. They were watching, Steven Crowder. They were watching PBD podcast. It's where all the viewers went. We took them. And that just goes to show, again, that traditional news media, legacy media, is dead. We are more relevant than they are. We have a bigger audience. We have more influence. And when I say we, I don't just mean at the Daily Wire. I mean, we're the best, obviously, but I mean all of us in digital media. We are more trusted and more influential than the cable news outlets and the mainstream media outlets. And this is a trend line, obviously, that much like so many other trends that we saw come to fruition this election, the Hispanic vote and all the rest of it, a trend line that you could trace back, that you could see began before this election. But this election does feel like, it feels like crossing kind of a threshold. And when it comes to the media, this threshold has been crossed where these people just are not relevant anymore. Like they don't matter that much. They are now, and they'll continue to exist. I mean, CNN will continue along. I'm sure even 20 years from now, there will still be CNN. But they just don't matter. They don't have any real, like if you already agree with CNN about everything and you, for some reason, still have cable, maybe you'll tune in. But their influence has been completely destroyed. It's all very insular. They're only talking to themselves. And much like these late night TV hosts now, it's like they're not even trying. They're not even trying to appeal to a majority of people. And they're not even trying to appeal to a majority, but then also influence that majority back towards them by being a little bit more subtle with the propaganda. That's what the left did for many, many decades. They were very good at it, and they had a lot of success with it. Late night TV, late night comedians have always been politically biased. Everybody is. And if you go back to the 90s and you watch a late night TV host, you could tell, I mean, if you're perceptive, you could tell that they have a bias. You could tell from the kinds of jokes that they're telling and what they focus on. But it wasn't like this. They weren't just looking into the camera and delivering a tearful monologue about how they feel after an election. And this is the kind of thing that they're doing now. And it just, and I'm very thankful that they've made this shift, because before they were really, really effective at propagandizing and influencing people, and now they totally impotent. And it's not going to change. It's not going to go back. And I think that that's one of the many things we can celebrate. Did you know that American homeowners nationwide have over $32 trillion in equity? And cyber criminals are targeting it with a growing scam the FBI calls house stealing. House alarms, doorbell cameras, deadbolts, not going to work against these thieves, because they're not after your stuff, they're after your equity. If your title isn't being monitored, scammers can transfer the title of your home into their name using a one-page document they file at the county, then take out loans against it or even sell it behind your back. The scariest part? You won't find out until collection or even foreclosure notices start arriving in your mailbox. But by then, the damage has been done and you're left with a financial and legal nightmare. Best way to protect your equity is with triple lock protection from our friends at Home Title Lock. Triple lock protection is 24/7 monitoring, alerts of any changes, and, God forbid, if the worst happens, restoration services at no out-of-pocket cost to you. So when was the last time you checked on your title? If you're like me, the answer is never. That's exactly what scammers are counting on. But you can check on your home's title today and make sure you're not already a victim. You can get a free title history report and a 30-day free trial of triple lock protection today by going to HomeTitleLock.com using promo code Walsh, or click on the link in the description. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code Walsh, HomeTitleLock.com. America elected Donald Trump as the 47th president, and we're marking the moment with a 47 of our own. Use code TRUMP to get 47% off your new annual DailyWire Plus membership. Get unfiltered, ad-free daily shows from the most trusted voices in conservative media. Enjoy our full catalog of entertainment, including the box office smash and #1 documentary of 2024, Am I Racist? Plus, breaking news and live coverage from where the story is unfolding. During Trump's historic comeback, Daily Wire was live from West Palm Beach at Trump's campaign headquarters and even at Howard University as Kamala's hopes and the crowd's joy slipped away. There's never been a better time to join us. Use code TRUMP for 47% off at dailywire.com/subscribe. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. So yesterday we spent some time reviewing the predictably and yet still deliciously hysterical reaction from the left after Trump's historic win. And today we return to that well. It is a deep well, and the water is cool and abundant and refreshing. But rather than just luxuriate in the suffering of our opponents, as profoundly satisfying as that can be, I'd like to examine one theme that's emerged in many of these reactions. Now, shortly after Trump's victory was announced, we started seeing tweets like these popping up all over Twitter. Here's one, quote, "Women need to stop dating and having sex with men immediately, and I'm not joking or being dramatic in the slightest." That one has 400,000 likes. This one has almost 300,000. It says, quote, "Ladies, I'm being so for real when I say this. It's time to close off your wombs to males. This election proves now more than ever that they hate us and hate us proudly. Do not reward them." Here's another with nearly 400,000 likes. Quote, "Ladies, we need to start considering the 4B movement, like the women in South Korea, and give America a severely sharp birth decline. No marriage, no childbirth, no dating men, no sex with men. We can't let these men have the last laugh. We need to bite back." Now, the 4B movement, as she mentioned in the tweet, started in South Korea sometime around 2019 or 2020. The whole idea is that women opt out of sexual relationships with men. And they also opt out of marriage and childbirth. This is how they're going to exact revenge on male Trump voters. Even though male Trump voters want nothing to do with these women anyway, that hasn't stopped them from marching under this banner. And needless to say, the women of TikTok are fully on board.
I'm gonna be honest, I was very blindsided by the results this morning. I've decided that cigarettes don't count today, and I honestly might go get a tattoo. But I also have decided that for the next 4 years, I am going to abstain from schmex with men. And funny enough, I actually just broke up with my boyfriend a handful of days before the election, and it had nothing to do with the anticipation of Donald Trump winning this election. It had everything to do with problems within our relationship and massive differences between who we were as people, which was unfortunate and sad. I wish him well, though. But yeah, as a woman, my bodily autonomy matters, and this is my way to exercise sovereignty over that. So I highly encourage any other women that are single and care about progressing women's rights and still fighting for our bodily autonomy to do the same. Delete your dating apps, because we can come together in community, and if you need somebody to cuddle or hold your hand or give you a kiss, I bet you one of your girlfriends would do it, okay? And you don't even have to really be gay, okay? It's okay to have a lot of platonic love for the next 4 years. I think we can look to South Korea and the 4B movement as a point of inspiration for us.
Now, one funny thing about this is that some men, as embarrassing as it may be for them, did actually vote for Kamala. Yet these women are swearing off sex with all men. They aren't making exceptions for men who voted for Kamala. So they're basically admitting that they're only sexually attracted to conservative men. The male Kamala voters who have completely degraded themselves just to impress these women are getting thrown out with the bathwater. They're punished for something they didn't even do. They're listening to this and they're standing on the sideline like, well, wait, but I voted for her. Yeah, get out of here. We're not talking to you. That's what they get for being submissive male feminist dorks, I guess. It's just indignity on top of indignity. Here's another TikTok feminist weighing in.
Not that my content reaches a lot of men because I have an IQ of 130, but I want the men in this country to know that half the female population, we're dry. We're probably gonna stay dry. I'm dry as a desert, baby, and I don't want it to change. Yeah, we're not gonna like you anymore. You understand that? Like, it doesn't matter if you take away abortion. Like, we'll want to have your babies even less, right? Even if you take away contraception, like, women are really good at celibacy because you guys are actually a threat to us. So we have a lot less to gain from you. So yeah, 4B all the way. Let's make some money, I guess. That's all we can do now.
So just to reiterate, they are attempting to punish all men by refusing to be in relationships with us as men. But the problem is that, we aren't interested. In fact, speaking personally, I'm already married. Many of us are already married. So you can go ahead and be single and lonely for the rest of your life. It makes no difference to us. This is like keying your own car because you're mad at us. You're making a big show in your own driveway of keying your own car. Is this what you want? You see this? Look at this. Look what you've done. Okay. I mean, all right. Knock yourself out. You're trying to exact revenge on us by embracing the extinction of your own bloodline and living a life of spiteful, miserable solitude. Be our guest. Be our guest. Even the single men among us wouldn't want anything to do with you anyway. Even the single ones. They're not looking for bitter, condescending harpies. Every man, I'm telling you, every single one, 100%, no exceptions, would watch that video of that woman and just even taking the content out of it, like just the tone, that condescending, that tone, and this is something that women should realize, especially if you're a TikTok, one of these types on TikTok, that tone in that, it's the most off-putting thing for men in the world. Like it's nauseating. We actually want to throw up watching it. Just that tone in particular. You could not be. It doesn't matter how physically attractive you are. That tone just makes you're hideous to us. We can't get past it. And in fact, the greatest fear of single men everywhere is that they might accidentally marry a miserable, disgruntled feminist without realizing that that's her true nature until it's too late. Now, I've said to men many times that these types can't fool you, okay? I mean, if you're at all perceptive, maybe they could fool you for a minute, but just one conversation, one date should be enough to tell if it's that kind of woman. And you should be able to tell, whereas a wonderful, gracious woman, the spirit of such a woman, you could tell also from having a conversation. But anyway, if you are worried about that, well, now those types are taking themselves out of the pool. And so single men can breathe easier. So it's very much the opposite of a punishment. Let's play one more of these videos, and there are many to choose from, but this woman is perhaps the most committed of the bunch.
Just woke up this morning feeling spicy. You guys feel spicy? Because I do. All right. I don't know how to use this thing. Let's see what happens. Is this cutting off hair? I'm going to have to cut it shorter than that. Buzz it down, right? I think that this is too... it's getting hair. Let's see here. Maybe I got to cut it. Here we go. Have I given up on America? Have. Also given up on coloring this hair because, right? Coloring my hair, having my hair be long and luxurious, all that being skinny, being hot, being all the things that the patriarchy wants us to be, because clearly they don't give a shit about us. And I'm talking to you too, those of you ladies who have the internalized misogyny required to do what you did. Minorities who are so scared of a woman in power that you'd rather cozy up to the white man just in case some crumbs fall off his plate so that you may eat from them. Yes, scraps. I don't know how to work this thing, but I'm on my way. I'm gonna figure it out. When people tell me I can't do something, I want to do it. Just entering my middle-aged mom era. About to get the clippers out.
So she says she's done with being skinny and hot, which, you know, mission accomplished. And then she proceeds to butcher her own hair. Really showed us, didn't she? She's inflicted a severe punishment on us by cutting off her own hair. I, for one, renounce my support of Donald Trump. I regret having ever supported... If only I'd known that this random middle-aged woman was going to shave her head, I would have done anything to prevent it. I would have voted for Kamala, if only to ensure that this woman could keep her hair and still have sex with whichever men were desperate enough. I guess that's how she thinks we'll react anyway. That's what she's expecting us to say. Of course, in reality, these women really struggle to understand the basic logic of incentive structures. If you want to punish people for doing something that you didn't want them to do, thereby enticing them to do things you want them to do in the future, the punishment needs to hurt or inconvenience them personally in some kind of way. Shaving your head and pledging to die alone does not in any way hurt or inconvenience any of us. You know, that's the problem. Here's the second problem. If you're worried about your so-called reproductive rights, otherwise known as your right to murder your own offspring, those rights have not been impacted by the presidential election at all. Your legal ability to kill your child is exactly the same today as it was yesterday. It'll be the same after Trump is sworn into office as it would have been if Kamala was sworn into office. This presidential election has literally zero impact on whether or not you can kill your children. Now, I hesitate to make this point because I don't want you to kill your children. If you're dumb enough to think that Trump taking office means you aren't allowed to get abortions, I don't really want to disabuse you of that notion. I personally support a federal abortion ban. I wish we had one. But that's simply not going to happen. If the people in your state want to kill lots of babies, you will be allowed to continue doing that, unfortunately. Although I am very encouraged and also greatly amused by the fact that apparently a national abortion ban isn't necessary. Pro-abortion women are so confused about how our laws work and have such a tenuous grasp on civics that Trump's election is basically a de facto national abortion ban because they all just think that they're not allowed to get them now. And still not as good as a real one, but, you know, better than nothing. And that's one thing we could take away from this movement, this American 4B movement, as they call it. But here's the other thing. Leftist women are deeply troubled, and that seems too obvious to even bother saying, but I think it's worth saying anyway, that these women have serious personal issues. And leftism for them is not really an ideology or a political position. They have not, these are not women who have considered the issues and arrived at a political position on them. It's not that at all. They really have not considered any issues ever. This is an expression of their own disturbed emotional and mental states. That's why they're shaving their heads and screaming in their cars and pledging to be alone for the rest of their lives. Politics doesn't have that effect on people. It's not normal to react that way to a presidential election. These are miserable people, And Trump is simply the avatar that they're pinning their miseries on today. And if it wasn't him, it'd be something else or someone else. They are unhappy in their lives, and they're looking for someone to blame. They'll blame Trump. They'll blame Republicans. They'll blame the voters. They'll blame men. They'll blame everyone and everything but themselves, which is what this really comes down to. And it's why they are all today canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
Kamala Harris finally concedes. Jack Smith drops his case against President Trump, and the fight continues in tight races across the country. Check it out on The Michael Knowles Show.